Julia Roberts, America's sweetheart, has lit up the screen for decades, but not every co-star has shared the same warmth off-camera. Behind the scenes, tensions can flare, egos can clash, and chemistry can fizzle. While Julia is known for her smile, she's had her fair share of rocky working relationships in Hollywood. Let's dive into the top 7 actors Julia Roberts reportedly hated working with the most, and why sparks didn't fly. Number 1, Meryl Streep. Wright certainly felt so much empathy, and then you just have to push it away so that you can keep driving. That bitterness, that cruelty. Meryl, oh, she's like a surgeon in this movie. Her cruelty is so exacting, it's almost artful. And that's the thing about working with greatness. It can cut both ways. For Julia Roberts, the wound left by Meryl Streep wasn't just professional, it was personal, and it never quite healed. Their feud began far earlier than the public ever knew, not during August. Osage County, but more than 2 decades before, in 1991. Julia had discovered a passion project, a dark, emotionally raw film inspired by the true story of a woman's survival. This wasn't a glossy rom-com or a political drama. It was real, grim, and transformative. Julia helped workshop the script, bring in producers, and craft a role that she believed would finally shatter the industry's underestimation of her. It wasn't just a role, she reportedly told a friend. It was mine. I bled for it. Then seemingly overnight, it vanished. A leaked early draft found its way to Creative Artists Agency, and from there, into the hands of another of their top clients, Meryl Streep. Within 2 months, the project resurfaced under a new title, The Last Silence. It had a new writer, new branding, and most jarringly, a new star. Meryl. Julia's name was erased from the credits, and any attempt to reclaim creative ownership was met with indifference. No apology, no acknowledgement, no credit. Julia was gutted. Her team begged her to move on, but privately she spiraled, retreating from film for almost a year. Friends said she stopped answering calls, suffered from insomnia, and experienced full-blown panic attacks whenever Streep's name came up on the news. One intimate friend recalled a late-night conversation where Julia whispered, "I don't hate her because she's brilliant. I hate her because she knew what that project meant to me, and she stepped on it like it was trash." From that moment on, Julia had legal clauses inserted into her contracts that detailed creative control, scene breakdowns, and even the camera framing when sharing the screen with certain actors, especially Streep. So when the two were cast in August, Osage County in 2013, many assumed it was a sign the feud had thawed. In reality, it was a chess match. Tensions flared immediately. One producer claimed Julia pushed to alter the original ending, which showed Meryl's character sitting alone. A haunting visual. Julia allegedly insisted, "It's too sad. Maybe it should end with me. A little hope?" And the ending changed. Meryl, furious, reportedly skipped the film's TIFF premiere entirely. She was livid, one insider confirmed. She said she never wants to work with Julia again. In public, both remained gracious. Julia praised Meryl as a beautiful person and the best there is, but during press rounds, her discomfort seeped through. Reflecting on their brutal fight scenes, Julia admitted, "I felt like a monster choking her. I might go to hell for what I did to her on that set." But Meryl never once complained. After a particularly intense scene, she quietly iced her wrist off camera. Julia later confessed that moment haunted her. "She didn't even flinch. She cared more about me than herself," she told Hello Magazine. And yet the tension remains. Today the two remain icons, circling each other in the same rarefied air, but never truly touching. There's no open war, just silence. The cold, hard kind that never leaves. Here's number 2, George Clooney. At first glance, Julia Roberts and George Clooney seemed like Hollywood's golden friendship. Their red carpet banter was effortless, the kind of teasing chemistry most people assumed was just clever PR. But those who saw them on the set of Ocean's 11 in 2001 said the bond felt real. Real in a way that went beyond the script. Julia was fresh from a painful breakup with Benjamin Bratt, raw and open. George, charming as ever, stepped in like an old friend, offering her quiet laughs between takes, heartfelt texts late at night, and a kind of support that felt intimate without ever being labeled. It was never public, never official, but something grew. Then came the interview. While promoting the film Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, George said in Vanity Fair, "Julia's amazing. She acts well, and kisses even better. That kiss alone will bring people to the theaters." To the world, it was cheeky. To Julia, it was betrayal. That kiss, which was real, unscripted, and deeply personal, was meant to stay private. What devastated her even more was learning that George had shown a private photo of them in bed, an intimate moment captured during rehearsals, to a producer at Warner Brothers. Not for gossip, but for leverage. That photo helped George land his directorial debut and a $2 million production deal. Julia didn't release a statement. She didn't cry on talk shows. Instead, she faxed George one bitter, handwritten line. "Thank you for making me famous by killing me." From that moment on, the friendship shattered. No interviews, no red carpets, no more banter. When organizers suggested they co-present at the Oscars in 2014, Julia allegedly replied, "I don't stand next to ghosts." George, for his part, never offered a public apology. When asked in Esquire if he regretted burning any bridges, he simply said, "Some people walk away, some run, some disappear." Julia was all three. Their fallout wasn't dramatic, it was clinical. A surgical dissection of intimacy turned sour. No press feud, no lawsuits, just silence, the loudest kind. Number 3, Joy Behar. Hollywood feuds are often whispered about, but some explode live in front of millions. That's what happened when Julia Roberts sat down on The View in 2011. The topic, grief, motherhood, and the burden of celebrity. Julia was raw, honest, even tearful. And then Joy Behar, half joking and half lethal, asked, "Do you think your success comes more from your legs and your mouth than from your talent?" Silence. Deafening. The studio air turned sharp. Julia didn't storm out immediately. She looked at Behar, her voice slow and calm. "You're turning me into a joke, a smiling piece of meat." Then with devastating grace, she removed her mic and walked off. Live national television. Social media exploded. The backlash against Joy was fierce. Critics and fans alike called the question cruel, sexist, and smug. Hashtags trended for days. # Justice for Julia and # Cancel Behar. Joy tried to spin it the next day. "It was a joke. I make jokes." But Julia never came back. In a 2023 Vanity Fair profile, she finally spoke. "I don't hate her because she's a woman. I hate her because she's a man in disguise, wrapped in false grace." Asked if she'd forgive Joy, Julia said flatly, "No." Some people cross a line, then laugh from the other side. Joy later attempted an apology through a mutual friend. Julia didn't reply. She now refuses to appear on The View and has reportedly turned down award show invites when Joy's hosting. Number 4, Sean Penn. In 2005, Julia Roberts took a professional leap, stepping into the world of indie psychological cinema under the direction of Sean Penn, then known for his genius and his volatility. She had one condition: no nudity. Her contract was airtight, but Penn had his own vision, and it didn't involve consent. On a closed set, while changing between scenes, Julia was unknowingly filmed by a hidden camera. The footage was raw, unguarded. When she discovered a leaked version of the film weeks later, her world cracked. She confronted Pennsylvania. "Audiences crave truth," he reportedly said, "and your body is an irresistible truth." Julia begged him to remove the footage. She even offered to reshoot. He refused. The American release blurred the scene. The international cut did not. Julia didn't sue. She didn't rant on talk shows, but her silence spoke volumes. In 2022, she confided to close friends, "If anyone asks who I hate most, it's the first man who put my body on screen without my permission." Penn never apologized. In 2009, when asked about the controversy, he shrugged. "Great art always makes someone uncomfortable." Julia has since refused any script Penn is attached to, even as producer. As one casting director said, if his name's on the call sheet, hers won't be. We're number 5, Bradley Cooper. In 2010, Julia was ready to reinvent herself. Producing and starring in The Art of Falling, she handpicked Bradley Cooper as her co-lead, a rising star fresh off The Hangover. On set, the chemistry was undeniable. They shared late-night rehearsals, script revisions over wine, even tearful confessions about fame. Julia believed he was her creative equal. Then, it unraveled. Photos leaked, private rehearsals, tabloids speculated, and then Cooper began lobbying the director, changing the ending to center his character's emotional arc. Julia pushed back. The studio sided with Bradley. The final betrayal? A secret recording. A personal conversation Julia thought was private. Cooper later claimed it was for character research. Julia was devastated. He didn't just seduce me into bed, she told a friend. He seduced me into headlines. She cut him from the sequel. She cut him from her life. When asked years later about her greatest regret, she answered, some men broke my heart. Bradley made me disgusted with my own judgment. Number 6, Nicole Kidman. When Secret in Their Eyes cast Nicole Kidman opposite Julia Roberts in 2015, many expected fireworks. Instead, the sparks stayed cold. The tension began quietly in how Nicole treated the crew. She was professional, distant, too distant in Julia's eyes. Julia, known for treating everyone, from interns to studio heads, with the same warmth, couldn't stomach it. You can always tell who someone really is, she reportedly said, by how they treat someone who can't do anything for them. The strain worsened when Julia remembered something else. Nicole had once coveted the role of Anna Scott in Notting Hill, a role Julia nearly turned down. Nicole later admitted, I wasn't famous enough, not talented enough. That kind of history, quiet, competitive, buried, came bubbling back. Julia's public praise of Nicole was carefully measured, almost too glowing. She's sickeningly stunning, she told Hello magazine, but that pales in comparison to her humanness. Too perfect, too polite, too fake. Your number 7, Julianna Margulies. Long before The Good Wife, Julianna Margulies was just a waitress in New York, and Julia Roberts was a customer. According to Julianna, Julia was rude, dismissive, entitled. Years later, they met again. Both starring on Broadway, across the street from each other, Margulies brought up the memory. You were kind of horrible, she said. Julia didn't deny it. We were both 23. I was a jerk. I'm sorry. She bought Julianna dinner, but it didn't erase it. Publicly, Julianna brushed it off, but the shade lingered. She's lovely, she once said, when you're not waiting on her. Since then, no collaboration, no red carpet selfies, no praise, just polite distance. The woman behind the curtain, Julia Roberts, beyond the spotlight. The deeper we peer into these 7 stories, the clearer it becomes. Julia Roberts' Hollywood journey isn't just about fame and fortune, it's about the cost of both. The price of power. Julia Roberts didn't become America's sweetheart by accident. She rose at a time when women in Hollywood were expected to smile, play nice, and not cause waves. But Julia didn't just break the rules. She rewrote them. In the early 90s, while other actresses played by the system's unspoken rules, Roberts pushed for creative control, profit sharing, and behind-the-scenes influence long before it was fashionable. Some insiders say the feuds weren't born out of malice, but out of necessity. When Julia faced betrayal, misogyny, or dismissal, she didn't scream. She remembered. She negotiated harder. She iced people out, and she refused to give second chances. Her so-called feuds weren't publicity stunts. They were scars. In an industry that demands compromise, Julia often refused. That refusal earned her both admiration and enemies. What these feuds reveal about Hollywood: for every smile at a premiere, there's a buried insult. For every interview filled with praise, there's a contract clause crafted to prevent betrayal. The Julia Roberts story isn't unique, but her silence, her restraint, and the grace with which she carries those private wounds is. These stories reveal an undercurrent of Hollywood that the public rarely sees. Actors don't always get to choose integrity over exposure. Emotional boundaries are violated quietly, and professionalism is weaponized. Even the biggest stars often fight battles that would never be tolerated in other industries, let alone forgiven. And yet Julia has persisted, not just in surviving, but thriving. Despite these betrayals, she's never resorted to public spectacle. No courtroom, no tell-all memoir, no scathing interviews, only coded words, tight smiles, and hard-earned distance. Redemption and the lack thereof. It's worth noting that none of the people mentioned above, not Clooney, not Penn, not Bihar, not even Streep, have offered public apologies in full. They've avoided accountability behind the safety of plausible deniability, smirks, or silence. Meanwhile, Julia has carried the burden of appearing gracious through it all. She's praised those who hurt her in interviews. She's taken the high road, even when it was steep, lonely, and exhausting. Some argue she's difficult, that she's demanding, that she's hard to work with. But those close to her know a different truth. She's careful. She learned early that kindness without boundaries turns into vulnerability without protection. In Julia's world, silence is not weakness. It's armor. The legacy of a survivor. What defines Julia Roberts isn't just her smile, her roles, or her Oscars. It's the fact that she stayed. Through heartbreak, sabotage, and betrayal, she remained a force. She never let the darkest moments define her career. Instead, she evolved. She built her own production company. She mentored younger actresses. She protected her family, refused invasive press, and prioritized roles that resonated with purpose, not just profit. While others chased tabloid attention, she vanished between projects, emerging only when the story was worth telling. Julia Roberts didn't just survive Hollywood, she outlasted it. Where things stand now. Today, Julia lives far from the noise of Los Angeles, often in New Mexico or Malibu, choosing peace over spotlight. She's selective about projects, known for passing on roles that don't align with her values or creative instincts. She prefers intimate films with heart over blockbusters with egos. As for the 7 names in her past, she hasn't spoken to Clooney in over a decade. She has declined every invitation involving Joy Behar. She refuses to attend festivals where Sean Penn is scheduled to appear. She's never collaborated again with Nicole Kidman, nor accepted any media invitations to speak on her. She keeps a public, distant cordiality toward Meryl Streep, and nothing more. She has removed Bradley Cooper's name from all her professional records, even asking journalists not to bring him up during press tours. And with Julianna Margulies, that dinner was their final conversation. No calls, no texts, no olive branches, just a mutual understanding that nothing further needed to be said. Final words, what Julia teaches us about boundaries. There's a myth in Hollywood that forgiveness is the final act of maturity, that a real star shrugs off betrayal, hugs their rival, and smiles for the cameras. But maybe Julia Roberts shows us something braver, something real. Sometimes maturity is silence. Sometimes grace is absence. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away. In an industry that thrives on noise, scandal, and spin, Julia has chosen dignity. That might not make headlines, but it makes history. Epilogue, the myth of the sweetheart. Julia Roberts was never just the pretty woman. She was the producer behind the camera, the mind behind the rewrites, the woman who rewrote her own ending, again and again. The media loves to reduce powerful women into labels. Sweetheart, diva, difficult. But none of those capture Julia Roberts. She's not a headline. She's not a feud. She's a survivor who refuses to be defined by the people who betrayed her. And maybe that's the greatest role she's ever played.